Hi, I'm Tom Travat, and this is Photography Adjacent, a podcast about photography and everything else. Each week on our show, we speak to artists, activists, writers, and the occasional photographer to learn about life through their lens. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have an interview with Huan Liu, who is based in Hong Kong. He is a predominantly film photographer using medium and large format film cameras to capture the amazing people of Hong Kong. I love this conversation because we get into what it means to take a photograph of somebody and the kind of that proximity to reality and how you add something as a photographer, kind of little element of art. So carry on listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube. Thank you very much. Cheers. Huan Liu, very nice to meet you. Very nice to have you on the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us from Hong Kong. You're also known to me, at least, as Analogical Huan, because that's your Instagram name. Hi.
Hi, Tom. It's a big pleasure to be here. It's been a while since we last spoke, and your work has always been inspirational to me and a lot of other fellow photographers in our little community.
That's lovely. So we obviously know each other through Headshots Matter, and I think Headshots Matter is going to come up quite a lot in these kind of conversations. I'm going to give a little bit of a background on what Headshots Matter is, so that people who are listening to this for the first time get a sense of that, so they know what we're referring to. It's essentially a kind of group or directory of photographers, specifically in kind of the headshot or portrait specialism. They're kind of a directory around the world. So Juan's actually in Hong Kong, I'm in London. There's other photographers all around the world in big cities as well. So it's a really great way to kind of connect photographers together. It's run by Dwayne, who we've had on the podcast already. So check out his the link to his podcast in the description below. We'll pop it in that little bit down there. But Juan, we've chatted a couple of times already. We stay in touch. The main focus of your work is film work, which I absolutely love. It's been such a pleasure seeing your work popping up on Instagram over the past couple of maybe sort of 8 to 10 months. It might even be a year now that we've been in touch. But why don't you give a little bit of background about you, how you got into photography, and what you were doing before you got into photography?
All right. Well, my background is a little bit, not as straightforward in some of the photography business. I was in I was in finance before this. I worked in the office for like more than 10 years, but then I just got really bored of it. I always look out the window of my office, seeing all the beautiful light. I just want to go out to take photos.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got myself a little film camera, actually, because for me, I always had a digital camera, but I didn't like what I was doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got myself a little film camera. I got into this deep hole of the shooting film and develop, and then I got into the scanning the whole thing, and so from there I was just absolutely in love with the analog process against the general trend of digital photography, actually. So I was a little bit of odd at the beginning, but then actually over the years, film actually started to come back, and more and more photographers actually start to realize actually film gives a special aesthetics that digital is very well. It can be achieved digitally, of course, but then this is much more difficult. So that's how I got into photography, and my portrait studio actually only started not too long ago, a little over a year now. 1.5 year is started off a project from my living room during COVID. I was bored and no one is seeing anyone. So I'm like, okay, do something with my camera. Then I start actually doing here in my studio. It's actually part of my house, and I set up a backdrop and started asking people to come in and take photos. And then actually people start to want to pay me for the job. And like, okay, why not? And yeah, so that I found something I can pay for all my equipment, and so that's how I started this whole portrait photography thing. And it's been a quite interesting ride.
Absolutely. I mean, anybody who's not watching, who's maybe listening, Juan's actually sat, and behind him there's like a film scanner and a printer, and the wall's been painted grey. Clearly, this is you've gone all in. You've taken this very seriously now. You've left the finance world behind and gone full bore into photography, haven't you?
It's actually a great feeling to be able to do what you really love,
absolutely,
for yourself, not for somebody else. So so actually, I think photography is essentially a entrepreneurship. We're all entrepreneurs, actually. Working for ourselves. It's quite interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been watching, looking at your work for the last year, just under a year maybe, and we've often been having these kind of conversations about the technical aspects of how you produce the kind of work that you produce, or how other people are getting the results that they get. But one of the things I think is absolutely clear with you is that you've got an idea of who you are as a photographer. And frustratingly, you seem to have got that very, very early on. Like, if you started a year and a half ago or whatever, it's like, damn, you've started knowing exactly who you are as a photographer. You're very good technically. That's a given, obviously. And for someone who shoots almost predominantly film, almost 100% of it is film, you have to be good technically, because it's a different type of margin for error, but you've not got as much kind of increments of error, essentially, right? Especially with slightly older medium format cameras. So
life used to be a lot harder for photographers.
Life used to be a lot harder for photographers, yeah, exactly, and slower and more methodical and more potential. Yeah, that's for sure. But this for me is like an example of somebody who's decided this is what their brand is as a photographer. I'm analogical one. You've said that from the very beginning. I do this type of photography, and I'm not going to do necessarily another type of photography. Of course, you do digital and you do color photography as well, but it's front and center of what you do is the analog, medium format, mostly black and white portraiture, and it's outstanding. It's an outstanding kind of both the work is good, but also the kind of decision to be that person from the beginning. It's almost like you had a marketing degree before you started.
No, Tom, you're too kind. But I left out a little bit of my background actually. To prepare for a full-time career in photography. Actually, after finance, I decided to take a degree in philosophy.
Yes, of course.
So actually, I did a lot of self-discovery process during this. Actually, I did it for almost 6 years, the degree, to prepare for photography. Why I did this, because in 2018, I actually went to London to study with Magnum Photos, part of their documentary program. And then I realized, as a finance business professional, I have no idea about the question of aesthetics, right? What is beauty? What is right? So photography as an art, you and I both agree what we're doing is art. It's not just randomly, doing something randomly to appease the public. Actually, as you said, we have to know who we are as a photographer. And that's actually who we are as in art. Actually, is outside of the art. So who we are in photography is not about who we are in photography. It's about who we are. Period. Right. right? So I think a lot of choices we both make in terms of which photos to keep, right? How we light up our subject, what kind of feelings do we want to convey in our photos, are large part extension of who we are as a person, right?
Hmm.
What we think are the good things in life, right? This
Absolutely.
essentially is a moral question, right? Right.
Yeah.
So I think we I see a lot of, I don't want to get into political thing, but a lot of our views align in that
Mm.
aspect as well, because everything is holistic, everything's
Hmm.
connected. Our self-expression happens in all areas of our life, our
Hmm.
art, our ideals, right?
Hmm.
The way we handle people, we handle our relationships,
Yeah.
our political views, right? All those are connected, right? Um, so what I so come back to photography. What I think, what I who I am in photography, in the art, is I try to find an anchor for uh, for beauty, for what's good, right?
Hmm.
Because we all know this problem that seems that what's beautiful is actually relative, right? Is
Sure.
relative to what's the current Instagram trend, right? It seems
Yeah.
that way, but then the problem is the trend always changes. How do you how do you how do you decide what's good? Maybe the trend this year is like this, and next year
Mm.
is something else. This year's
Yeah.
analog. Everybody is trying to lift their blacks, right? And then next year is like full blown, high saturated images.
Yeah.
How do you decide? And then so that's why I give this question a lot of thoughts. That what is the anchor we can rely on as
Hmm.
artists? So then I realized actually the only anchor we can rely on is the connection to reality, right?
Hmm.
We have to somehow preserve this authenticity,
Hmm.
the connection with reality, so that we don't fly away
Yeah.
in the abstract world of art,
Mm.
right? And that makes me probably a very mediocre artist, because I'm totally unimaginative. But then actually I feel kind of I feel content, because
Hmm.
I'm anchored to reality, and for me that's okay, because I there's a this okay, maybe I'm rambling, I
No, no.
start rambling, but yeah, so basically I decided to anchor myself in authenticity and reality, and
Hmm.
the direction my photos take is actually a realist approach, that
Hmm. Hmm.
I try to capture what I see, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Not too much as how I imagine, but what I see
Yeah,
in the person, in the image, and
of course.
yeah,
Well, then it makes even more sense, the name, because the essential claim here is that the photograph is an analog to reality. You're not using, it's not just that it's an analog format that you're using, it's that it's analogous to reality as much
yeah,
as it possibly
exactly,
can be. Yeah.
exactly, yes,
Yeah. So it does
yes,
make a lot of sense. Even, this is something I hadn't even thought of before, but, even in your kind of branding of your business, these kinds of feelings come through. There is that sense that there's a kind of documentary aspect to
yes,
what you do.
exactly.
And
You're
so
absolutely right.
yeah. And what I think is really important with film photography, or what I guess is the limitations, but also the kind of the thing that actually powers film photography to become so beautiful, is its limitation of quantity, the scarcity of the amount of frames that you have. In a sort of 3 or 4 hour session, I might shoot 500 to 800 frames on a digital camera, but I can only shoot 10 on film. I have a very, very limited amount of film that I can shoot, and so you put that limitation on the shoot. That limitation actually drives you, right? It actually motivates you to be a particular type of photographer. So I'd love to hear about, like, what does a session look like? You've got someone in for like an hour and a half or 2 hours or however long you shoot with somebody. You've only got like 10 or maybe 20 frames that you're going to be shooting. If you're shooting maybe 2 rolls of 120, what's the process?
All right, I'm actually started to shoot up more large format recently. I find that's even more extreme.
Making it even more difficult for yourself, yeah.
Yeah, making it more difficult. But the thing is, I just it's like a jumping a parachute from the plane. Is that you just have to trust the process, no matter how scary it is. So when I as a client, when I have a client request to shoot the film, I really every session I tell myself, trust the process, and then I'll try to warm up, with the digital camera first to shoot a film, but then once I see what I like in terms of lighting, then I'm just gonna I will just put away the digital camera and start shooting film. And at the beginning it's actually quite scary because you don't know what you get. But then I realize, especially after using large format, is that actually every frame is a good frame.
Every frame's a good frame.
Every frame is good frame. It's actually quite amazing how it is, because that's all you have.
Yeah.
And because that's all you have, it necessitates is beauty, right? It's a necessary truth that is it's a good frame because that's all you have. It's like you look back 20 years, your photo from 20 years ago. Maybe the photo itself technically looks, just average, but that's the only photo you have, and that's the best photo you have.
Absolutely. I love it. No, it's fantastic. No, it's really lovely. I mean, so you say you warm up with a digital camera to begin with, which means presumably you're warming up, but also your client or your subject is warming up too. Because it takes a little while to get into the feeling of it, doesn't it?
Yes. I think it's very important to develop this kind of rapport with the client, and to develop this relationship, right? I think all my clients tell me this, that they are not good with cameras, right? So I serve actually a different clientele as you do. My clients are actually I rarely shoot the actors. Most of them are people who are not who are underserved by this photographic community. But so they trust me, and I really appreciate this trust. And but I think it's very important to basically know them, at least to make them feel that they're talking to a friend. And only when that happens, I think you can have a photo where the subject is relaxed, and that the subject brings out their true self, present their true self and the vulnerable self sometimes to you as a photographer, and that's when you click the shutter and all that. It was just my little process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you know, I think it's interesting. There's this debate around representation, right? So, as an artist, you understand this kind of process of representation, that the work itself is a piece of work that is somewhat different from reality. It has an analogy, as we talked about, to reality, but in itself, it's a representation of reality. What you're trying to do with your kind of documentary style approach is to have that analog be as proximate to reality as possible, right? Really, that's fantastic. That's obviously what everyone kind of strives for, is that kind of approach, like authenticity and truth, and the kind of the inner world that you maybe get when someone kind of relaxes into the process. And I feel this with my clients. I did a shoot yesterday where the first, let's say, half an hour of the shoot, there's one type of person that you're seeing. And then after that half an hour, after that 45 minutes, there's that point where it's like it tips into someone else. Somebody else comes out in that moment, and you're like, there's that person. Maybe they've put on a different outfit. Maybe the previous outfit wasn't actually who they felt themselves to be, and they've put on a different outfit, and like, I can relax into this, and I've had a moment to get into this feeling. With a film camera, it strikes me that actually you're putting the stakes very, very high. Like, maybe the nerves are going to be even higher. Everyone's going to be a little bit more on edge because you've got that kind of lack of do-overs in a way. But you're saying the opposite, almost, that it's like, actually, all of that doesn't matter. What really matters is that in that moment, you capture that one frame and it's just a bam. That's the one, because there's no other choice.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something really beautiful, right? Because actually what happens is, in a way, what you're saying in that moment is that actually, because it's the only one that's available, whatever happens in that frame is the truth. Rather than saying, I can do this 300 times to get the one that I like, like the way that we might take 300 selfies to get the one that we want to post on Instagram. Actually, you've got one opportunity to get the right photograph. And, what's the difference between 300 times versus one time? Well, it's actually, they're all stories. They're all true stories. They're all just as true stories as each other. So it's a very interesting kind of proposition that when you start breaking it down, we do this thing where it's like, I'm trying to serve my client in a certain way and get to something that's proximate both to truth, but also to kind of the idea of themselves that they have. Whether that's an idea of themselves as an actor, or the idea of themselves as a professional business owner, or something like that, about their brand or whatever it is. You're not actually trying to get authenticity. You're trying to get to an idea they have of themselves that is their brand. That's not necessarily the same thing as authenticity. That is an idea of yourself. That's what you say to yourself, the story you tell about yourself. But you're saying, no, boom, you've got one opportunity, and that's the one, and that's the only one that there is. I think it's really beautiful. That scarcity aspect of it's fantastic.
And also, I think there's two kind of philosophy that how we produce our work, right?
Mm-hmm.
One is focused on the result. The other one is the focus on the process.
Mm-hmm.
You can think, I have a control over the result. I take 300 photos. Or you can think, the only thing I can control is my process.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen to the result.
Exactly.
And this is actually a difference between a documentary photographer and a commercial or any other photographers, actually, because I shadowed some Magnum photo photographers, and they can never know what's going to happen during the event. They're just there but they have the process, and then what happened. Whatever happens during the thing, they don't care because they trust their process.
Yeah,
and then everything will just fall into place. You Absolutely. Have to just believe in that. But yeah, so you have to understand that you're what you offering the client is not the result. What you're offering the client is the process, and the result comes because of the process.
It's valuable. It's incredibly valuable. And I think that people recognize that, and I certainly recognize that when I see it in your work. I think that people will understand that what they're buying is not the result, but it is your artistry and the process that you're going through, and actually in a way an experience.
Yes.
Like, who gets to have a photograph on film actually these days? Who gets to have a photograph on large format film? People if people are lucky, they might get it shot on film, but it'll probably be 35 mil. It won't be medium format, and it certainly won't be large format. So,
Yeah.
in a way, that's incredibly valuable, like having an opportunity to work with you on that kind of stuff. Let's pivot the conversation a little bit, because I think this feeds into what I want to ask you next, which is about your business practice. Like, how do you run your business, and how do you understand yourself? How do you understand your positioning within the market that you're in?
That's actually I'm gonna I try to answer the second question first. I think
Sure.
that's a very interesting question. I want to say something about it before I forget. Um, I did a lot of soul searching before I got into this. I At the beginning I thought, okay, maybe I will just because I was in finance, maybe it's easy for me to go into all the banks or the hedge funds and shoot their bosses. And
Mm-hmm.
then I realized yes, that pays a lot, but then I realized that's not what I want to do because you know, if I want to make money, I'll be working in the bank instead of being their
Exactly.
photographer.
Yes.
so 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 then so my positioning, I'm actually not how to say a traditional headshot photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my clients come to me because they want a record of themselves at a certain stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they going through some changes, or maybe they just had a baby. They want to have
Mm-hmm.
a
Of
record of themselves,
course.
and then I realized when somebody like that want to take just a record of themselves, they don't want to know any practical purpose other than documenting themselves.
Mm.
They have nowhere to go because in Hong Kong, they're either family photographers or
Mm-hmm.
wedding photographers. They their job, or they think what they're doing is trying to beautify or trying to
Of course.
create this ideal, and then deliver the ideal
Mm-hmm.
picture to their clients. But no one actually is crazy enough to present reality in the well, it's difficult to say objective way, but in a more truthful, more authentic
Mm-hmm.
manner. And so so then I think okay, maybe I can be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
So so a lot of clients actually come to me. Uh, they have no need whatsoever other than just keeping a record for themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I do actually.
Yeah.
That's the market I serve. I
Absolutely.
serve the market that no one else is interested in serving.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I run my business as a one-man team. I use this service called a Pixie Set. I know I was trying to sell you guys, but it's
I
actually
use it as
quite
well.
an amazing system for
Sure.
photographers. It handles all the bookings and scheduling, the billings and everything, accounting, and it's actually I can't operate without it. Yeah, and I do everything. I do shooting. I do editing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Not a very good editor, you know. but yeah, I'm still learning. I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you. Um, it's really nice to get a kind of sense of other cities, other countries, markets for these things. So that's a really good kind of insight into the Hong Kong market. Uh, and in a way, I think that we should be always striving to be something different, right? We should always be striving to be the kind of photographer that there's one of you in that particular field. Like, if someone wants this type of photograph, the only person to go to is you. That's the that's the aim, and then obviously all of your efforts then after that with your brand awareness and so forth is essentially to try and let people know that that's what you do, so that they know to come to you. So you produce that kind of, you're positioning yourself in the market in that particular way. So I think it's fantastic. Let's talk about the last year and a half. I mean, it must have been quite a roller coaster of a year for you. I mean, I know obviously, yes, you took quite a measured and considered approach to entering into starting your business. You've got, shadowing Magnum photographers, doing your degree in philosophy, and the visiting London and so forth. But this last year and a half, like, tell me what's been happening. Like, what did it feel like to get that first paying client in? What was the kind of that lovely kind of emotion? Tell me more about that.
Okay, my first client was a Tai Chi master,
Amazing.
and he found me through some friends, and then so he insisted he wants a black and white film because his grandpa was a photographer and left a lot of really amazing negatives, and they have exhibitions and stuff. But yeah, so that's my first client, and I didn't know what I was doing, and so I'm like, okay, fine, I'm gonna just try. Okay, if it doesn't turn out, I'm not gonna charge you and all that. So it's actually quite scary, but then but then the photos, it turns out, actually one of my best works. I still Amazing. Cannot achieve that kind of. The photo is really amazing. It turned out really. I don't know how I did it. I forgot what my process was, but I just hope I can replicate that. Yeah, so that's my first client. And then I started to try to get more clients. A little bit struggle, as you know, because digital marketing is not my thing. I don't know where to start. I paid a lot of money to the wrong wrong people, I guess.
We all have. Yep.
yeah. But then so in the first few months, it's quite a struggle. You don't know. You're paying the rent. I rent a studio, and you're paying the rent, but you don't have a client. You don't have bookings. What do you do? So then, so I actually at the beginning I shoot a lot of freebies to people and just to build my portfolio, right? I mean, but then I think a few months, half a year. Like after I hit the half-year mark, things start to pick up. I get more and more clients, and people start to notice me on Instagram. I grow my followers. Now I have like close to 5,000, which is unbelievable for
amazing. Yeah.
for what I never thought I could actually have anybody interested in my work, but. Yeah, I'm just happy that now I'm paying the rent, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the business is sustaining itself. That's good.
Yeah.
You don't have to kind of dip into the savings anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Talking of money, if it's okay to ask, how much does a session cost with you?
My standard session cost 3,500 Hong Kong dollars. So that's about I think about 350 pound. So 1 to 10. Okay. Yeah, it's easy to convert. Yeah, so about 350 pound. You get 5 photos, digital photos. For my film session, it's 500 pound, right? 5,000 Hong Kong dollars. So I try to I try to price myself at the point where I would pay for it. I think for the people who are interested in my work, this is the kind of price that people will not think is too much, right? So then so that's how I price it. I don't want to charge people 2,000 pounds for a glamour shot and end up under deliver. I want it to be something like people will actually try to pay some money and just find out what it is. And obviously, if you want more photos, they're available purchase.
Mhm.
I have a client actually bought like 30 photos on me too,
Amazing.
and then so that session actually turned out really well.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the things that strikes me about your work is that there is a sense of connection that you're creating between you and the other person, and it seems that there's a kind of, it's quite stripped back. It's very simple. You have one light. I think the majority of the time it's one light,
Yeah.
and it's a massive, great big softbox or umbrella or something. I've seen the behind the scenes photos, and in a way, you're not, even though you're very technically minded, you're not letting the technicalities get in the way of the conversation or the connection that you're creating with the photographs. So what I see in your work is that sense that you're sat there having a conversation with somebody and you're engaging with that person and letting them kind of shine through the photographs. And I think that that's done in a number of ways. And I think this is something that actually a lot of photographers maybe miss. And, I'm guilty of it as well, because I kind of put maybe too much of myself into my work sometimes. But I think that this idea of proximity to truth is a kind of lovely hook to get you into those kinds of conversations. You must have like amazing stories about, you just literally told me the amazing story about your very first client being the Tai Chi master and his grandfather being a photographer and so forth. You must have these kinds of good conversations.
Actually, it's interesting you think about this. Actually, I give this very question a lot of thoughts.
Mm-hmm,
I think I hinted a little bit in the chat, but our chat group is constantly 100 messages. I can't follow. I can't catch up with that. But so my theory is that there has to be a balance between how much photo and how much personality.
mm-hmm,
The
mm-hmm,
photo has to match with the personality.
of course.
If you are photographing, say, a star, like a celebrity, I think the photo has to be a lot more interesting, because otherwise people think, oh, you're just taking a photo of a celebrity. It has nothing to do with you. A good
Mm-hmm,
celebrity photo is a photo that's really creative, that's really
mm-hmm.
interesting, and
Yeah.
you making the celebrity doing some crazy things and crazy lighting, crazy outfit, because there's such strong personality in that photo that you have to balance out with the technicality of aspects. All other stuff has to come together. But for my clients, like I said at the beginning, they are people who are not served by this photographic community. They're
Mm-hmm,
underserved by the photographic community. There are people who are not comfortable in front of camera. They really they get nervous because they think they're not good looking. They're, so in that sense, that if there's a too much photo, in a sense, you put too much of yourself into the photo, you abstract the person. The person just the client become a element of composition,
mm-hmm,
and then you lose that connection because the personality is not strong enough to sustain the photograph,
mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
Tom, I think your work is really because your clients have very strong personalities. They are all professional. Most of them are professional actors. They have that their personality. They have this. They're good with camera. They're at ease. And then yes, you need to put into yourself into make it a art, right?
Mm-hmm,
Great art. But for my clients, if I do that, they will be overwhelmed. They will be covered. They will be
mm-hmm,
invisible. They become a
mm-hmm,
beautiful photo, but that person
mm-hmm,
is gone. So
mm-hmm.
I actually, apart from I don't know how to work with more than one light, I this become kind of works best for my kind of clients, because I need to make the things as simple as possible so that the person is the number one, is the main
Absolutely.
actor, not the light, not the
Mm-hmm,
camera. is the person. I have to be able to see the person in my photograph.
Yeah.
And that's how I choose my photographs. Can I see this person?
Yeah, that's lovely. That's really nice. What's next? What's the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year projection for you? How do you feel like this is going to go? Because you've just started, really, aren't you? You're beginning of the journey.
Well, next is a set of a brown color strobe.
Okay, well, not what else you're going to buy, but like we can all list the things we want to buy.
Yeah, I think if I can get there, that's already I'm quite happy. Actually, my plan, I don't have a grand plan. I'm happy to continue to to serve people who like my work and who can help me pay my rent and my crazy wish list of equipment, and then I'm content. Actually, I'm very happy. This is my dream job.
Lovely. That's really nice. I mean, it's really interesting because I think that there's this real tendency, maybe clearly over the last 4 years because of COVID, but even prior to that, for people to move out of a 9 to 5, an office job, very often in a finance position, to move into some kind of what might be considered unalienated labor or unalienating labor, right? Which is to say, a role where they love what they're doing.
Yeah, Mark says sometimes he is on the mark.
Exactly. So there is that sense, right? Is that you've done this move? I have never done this move because I've never worked in an office job.
Alienated labor.
I've never been particularly alienated in my life. No. So there is this move where it's like you go from you see people like, okay, want to start a craft beer brand or like a coffee brand or something like this. And photography is actually one of those classic careers where people go from their office job into it, or from their kind of we've got Mike in the chat group who was or is still a nurse, and he's kind of transitioning into photography. People who kind of go from a very, very kind of high pressure job, long hours, into something where it's like, I'm going to set my own hours. I'm going to create something that I think is beautiful to serve the communities that I'm part of. And actually, this is such a lovely transition. I think that we're all kind of going through. It's great. We're all a little bit older, right? Rather than being like 22, 23 year olds being like, oh, photography. We're all kind of like, oh, we're in our late 30s, early 40s, starting this process from a later point in our lives. That's quite nice. Apart from
but
like
actually, is photography is a hyper competitive
of course
industry that actually is but again, you're doing something you love, so that I think people can actually carry through.
Yeah, exactly. There's that phrase which obviously no one agrees with, or really or there's the sort of second part of the phrase. The phrase is like, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. The second part of the kind of rejoinder to that phrase is, no, you do something you love and you never stop working. You'll work harder than you've worked on anything.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's true, right? Isn't it? It's like, oh, I love this. I'm going to spend every hour of the day working on it. I'm going to be learning. I'm going to be honing my craft. I'm going to be getting better at my marketing and so forth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Before our conversation, I'm actually scanning film. It's just like, it can't stop.
You just can't stop it. No, exactly. Yeah. Fantastic. And it must be kind of approaching kind of like midnight or half 11 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's quite late as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock in Hong Kong now.
Yeah, lovely. Juan, we're coming to the end of our conversation, so thank you so much. But is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't had a chance to chat about yet?
Actually, I think we cover most of the stuff. The last part actually is, I want to talk about the balance between the personality and the photograph. You bring it out nicely, and I think this is the topic I've been thinking a lot lately, and I'm happy that you brought it up.
Yeah, it's vital to our craft, right? It's that kind of constant question that's in the back of your mind, like, how much do I put myself into this?
Yes.
How much do I kind of let somebody else, that kind of little tug of war? Yeah. And it's the kind of, for me, it's there's multiple processes, multiple kind of techniques, or multiple kind of elements to add something to the photograph that might be considered me, like the process. And I can see what you're doing is like, in a way, it's like on the one hand, you're adding something to the process, which is the cameras that you're using, the kind of the fact that you'll go, okay, right, I'm going to go back in time a little bit to use these kinds of cameras and so forth. But then at the same time, you're kind of trying to strip back. So there's that sort of play between the two. And in a way, film is actually the perfect medium for this because it does both of those things.
I did a European tour last month. I was in
Yes,
Europe.
you didn't come and see me.
Yes, but in September, well, don't worry. But
okay, good.
so I went to Florence and I went to Milan. I see a lot of exhibitions of the old masters. I realized that for an artist, how to do it is not important. When you're at the level of art, the question is why you're doing it. And I think that's the question that we will be thinking about as artists forever.
And that is the perfect place to end the conversation. Juan, where can people find you online?
You can find me on my Instagram, Analogical Photos, or on my website, analogicalphotos.com.
Fantastic. Lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure. Yes.
Lovely. That's great.
All right.